This president just took healthcare away from 17 million people. He's cutting food assistance to millions of people. There's always this rhetoric about, oh, well, we've got to take care of our people first. Oh, we've got to make sure that American citizens are taken care of. Bullshit.
Krystal Ball and Clay Travis were guests on Piers Morgan's show. They start going back and forth about Donald Trump credit, the economy, the border, and things get heated pretty quick. Let's watch how Krystal Ball exposes Piers Morgan and dismantles Clay Travis.
The Democrats have just crashed to a new 35-year low in popularity. Trump has just announced a new trade deal with the EU, which is more advantageous to America than the previous deal. Are you prepared to give Trump any credit today?
I will give him credit for humiliating the Europeans effectively. But in terms of delivering for the American people, I mean, remember what we were sold originally? 90 deals in 90 days? How did that work out? And now we're going to have tariffs put on especially key pharmaceuticals coming out of Europe, not to mention European cars. So what you're likely to see is prices go up for your average working class American. So no, for the American people, I think that this is not even close to a win.
And reducing the number of people coming in illegally on the southern border from 10 million in 4 years to, I think it was 6,000 last month. You give him credit for that?
He certainly has cracked down on the border, no doubt about it. But, you know, the cruelty of this immigration system, we're learning more and more about the men who were sent to CCOT with no due process, who were raped and tortured and abused. We're learning more about the conditions in Alligator Alcatraz. I mean, it's a horror show, which is exactly why the American people are revolting against all of his immigration policies across the board, even though that had previously been a strength for him.
All right, Clay Travis, one of the problems, it seems to me, for the Democrats is their unwillingness to give Trump credit when he gets things right. The Trump dementia or derangement syndrome, as people call it, it is a real thing, isn't it? Because I think they would get so much better in terms of a relationship with Trump, with themselves, if they were just able to give him credit where he deserves it.
Well, first, the last time I was on with you, Piers, I think I said that I would dress as a full clown if the stock market in 18 months had not rebounded to where it was on election day. We are, as I speak to you right now, at an all-time high. I think you're right. And by the way, I don't know if anybody else on that show who disagreed with me is willing to put on the clown nose, but maybe they should. I hope they at least didn't sell their stocks, despite the fact they were telling everybody else to do it. But yeah, look, Trump ran primarily, Piers, on three things. He ran on the economy, he ran on border, he ran on crime. On the economy, we're at record highs in the stock market. Inflation is basically beaten down to about 2.5%. On the border, as you just mentioned, there are no illegals coming in at all. We are deporting violent illegal criminals at record rates. And on crime, it's not getting a ton of attention, but we are on pace in the United States potentially for the lowest murder rate, lowest violent crime rate in the 21st century, if these numbers can hold for the remainder of this calendar year. I don't see how you could look at those three things and not say, hey, first 6 months of Trump, it's not a disaster. We've also started to lessen the amount of war. There are less people dying. He managed to destabilize the Iranian government and take back their chances of getting nuclear weapons without a single loss of life. I can't think, Piers, in my life, I'm 46, of a better 6 months presidency than what we've seen from Trump so far.
Where would you criticize him, Clay?
If I were going to criticize him, it would probably be that I think on the Epstein case, I think that they totally overpromised and underdelivered, and I think it has knocked them off their stride. I think Pam Bondi with phase one on the binders, whoever okayed that, it was a colossal misstep that has created a mess of their own creation that was unnecessary. And that they could have addressed in a more succinct, honest way with the public. But if you take that off the calendar, I think you can say, look, the Senate has not moved as aggressively as they should have to confirm his judges. They're not moving at a very good pace there. I think you can address issues on that front. But I think in general, if I were giving him a letter grade, I'd give him an A, maybe not an A+. But an A. And again, I think it's the best first 6 months of any president in my life.
Clay Travis says Donald Trump deserves an A for the first 6 months. An A? Come on. Clay Travis rattles off stocks, inflation, crime, and the border like that proves everything. But stocks aren't the whole economy, and Clay Travis never shows what policy moved which number. Piers Morgan lets it ride, and Krystal Ball is the only one asking for receipts when Clay Travis says basically 2.5% inflation and best crime numbers. He skips the basics. Which measure, which month, compared to what? You can't grade a presidency off a few friendly data points and a mid-year guess. And no illegals coming in at all? That's not serious if you're going to make a claim that absolute. Back it up. Krystal Ball's point is simple and fair. Show the chain. Policy, mechanism, outcome. If Clay Travis can't connect those dots, it's not analysis, it's cheerleading. Piers Morgan asks for credit, but credit for what? Exactly vibes or verified results? What standard are we using for an A here?
Well, Krystal, what grade would you give Donald Trump?
So let me just clear up for your audience. I am not some liberal Democratic sycophant who capes for the Democratic Party and can never give Trump credit. In fact, in his first term, I actually supported the tariffs that he put in place because I thought they made some sort of sense. This term, there is virtually nothing, maybe changing like the pressure on the shower heads, that executive order, that I can get behind. And I'll tell you why, Piers. First of all, his major quote unquote accomplishment at this point is the big, beautiful bill, which will strip healthcare away from millions of people in order to fund a tax cut for the people who need it the least. Second of all, the level of fascistic cruelty with regard to the immigrant population here is more horrifying than I ever could have even anticipated. Deploying the military in American streets, rounding up people at Home Depot, sending them off with no due process to a slave labor camp. Are you kidding me? The idea that this is a peace president, hey, I thought he was going to solve the Ukraine-Russia crisis in a day before he even got into office. That's still ongoing. No changes there. We have backed and funded an absolute campaign of starvation and horror in Gaza, and we started a new war with Iran. So on every single level, this presidency has been a chaotic horror show and a disaster. And the people who will be hurt the most in this country are the very working class people that Trump claimed and lied to support. So I give him an F across the board. And again, I am not some Trump deranged. I've given him credit in the past. I said it was good when he went and talked to the leader of North Korea. I said it was good when he met with the Taliban to try to negotiate a deal. But he never actually had the stones to pull out of Afghanistan. But in any case, he's a disaster this time. I could not in my wildest dreams have imagined how terrible this administration would be and how quickly here only 6 months in.
Do you know, out of interest, Krystal, how many people Barack Obama deported in 8 years?
I know he deported a lot, Piers. But here, do you realize this, though? Clay said something earlier. He said, oh, we're deporting record-breaking numbers of violent criminals. Look, I'm fine with deporting violent criminals. The reality is that's not what's happening. Actually, the proportion of violent criminals that we are deporting is far less. Why? Because ICE agents have been told, stop chasing after the gang members. Stop going after the criminals because that takes time. That takes energy. Instead, Stephen Miller says, go to the Home Depot, go to the 7-Eleven, round up the mom, round up the grandma, round up the person who is going through the asylum process and actually doing the proper things and hasn't done anything wrong and ship them off to CCOT. It's disgusting. And that's why there's truly a revolt against it from the American public. I mean, the backlash against Trump's immigration policies is striking.
That wasn't actually my question.
Yeah. What is your question?
Well, do you know how many people Barack Obama deported in 8 years?
He deported millions of people. I'm not here to simp for Barack Obama. I think he had a lot of cruelty in his immigration system as well, which I said at the time and have said afterwards as well.
Krystal Ball goes point by point on Trump's record: healthcare cuts, cruel immigration raids, foreign policy disasters. And instead of dealing with any of that, Piers Morgan immediately pivots to Barack Obama's deportation numbers. That's classic whataboutism. It doesn't address the argument, it just shifts the spotlight. The problem is, it's not even the same conversation. Krystal Ball is talking about how ICE is targeting moms at Home Depot, people in the middle of the asylum process, folks with no criminal record. Piers Morgan responds with a total number from years ago under a different administration. That doesn't change what's happening now, it just muddies the waters. This is the move they use over and over again. When pressed on today's policies, they don't defend them, but they drag the debate backwards. The reality is, none of those past numbers erase the conditions, the tactics, and the choices this administration is making today. Krystal Ball is keeping the focus on the present, and Piers Morgan is trying everything he can to take it off the table.
Okay, that's fair enough. Clay, in this immigration policy that Trump is prosecuting, I completely think what he's done on the southern border is brilliant. It's great for America. It's great for security. He's completely stemmed the flow of people coming in there illegally, and everyone should agree to that. I also completely agree, and I think most Americans would completely agree, that the strategy that he set out to do of deporting people who are here in the United States undocumented and then commit a crime, I don't hear any Americans demurring about that. They're like, okay, fine. If you commit a crime when you're here and you're undocumented, you leave. Where the problem comes, and Krystal hit on this, I think, it feels something very un-American about ICE patrolling Home Depot to find people who may have been there 10 years, may have had kids in the United States, may be paying taxes, doing an honest day's work, who may be here undocumented, but who actually are contributing to American society. Do you not have a problem with those kind of people being rounded up in the way they are and shipped out of the country?
Tom Homan says there's 20 million illegals in this country right now. We know Joe Biden let in around 10 million in his 4 years, which is an unprecedented stem of illegal immigration. So the first thing Trump had to do was shut down that flow. Second thing he has to do is start to reverse it. And this year he is starting to reverse that process. I think it's unfortunate, but when you break the law, sometimes there are going to be stories that are important to get back. In the same way, when you were in Venezuela, and somebody got on the phone and they said, hey, if you come to America right now, they'll put you up in a hotel, they'll feed you, they'll give you Wi-Fi, and you get to stay in Manhattan. And you're living in squalor in Venezuela. Do you think that encouraged millions of people all over Latin America, those kind of phone calls, to make the trip to America? I think it did. And at some point, American generosity was being taken advantage of, and actual American citizens don't have the resources that they need. So sometimes daddy has to take control, and you have to sometimes be mean. And I think that's the way that the Trump immigration policy has to go, because the phone calls have to shift from, hey, you can stay in a 4-star Manhattan hotel and get taken care of on American taxpayer dime, to, hey, they're looking for people who are here illegally, don't come, and maybe even consider going back. And historically, the way that immigration worked in this country when illegals came in was they came in seasonally and then they walked back, basically traveled back to Mexico and still had lives there. What's happened is people have stopped going back to their countries of origin at all, and we can't be. I would ask to Krystal or anybody else, okay, you think it's being too mean. What's the number of illegal immigrants in this country that would be too many for you? For Krystal, for anybody else out there? For me, 20 million is too many. For a lot of Democrats, I think 100 million wouldn't be enough. So where do you draw the line? If you're breaking the law, sooner or later, there have to be consequences.
So can I just,
well,
I
that is a good question.
And Krystal, about that.
Yeah, Krystal, answer that.
I want to address a couple things about that. So first of all, I'm probably more permissive of immigration than your average Democratic Party member. You know, I know there's this idea that Democrats are open borders. That's obviously preposterous. But I believe, and I think this is borne out by the data, that immigrants overall are good for the country. Now, that doesn't mean that there isn't a limit to the number of people that you can reasonably absorb. Exactly what that number is, you'd have to get an expert to study and to be able to say. But there's something honest about what Clay is saying here, which is basically like the cruelty is the point. We need to make an example of people. It needs to be a horror show. That's exactly why you have these grotesque ASMR videos of deportations, all this like fascist theater of marching everybody through the park, the intentional cruelty at Alligator Alcatraz, the shipping of people to CCOT, where again, we now know that there are reports of rape and torture and abuse. Yeah, that is all an intentional part of the policy. So I appreciate the honesty about that. The dishonest part is there's always this rhetoric about, oh, well, we've got to take care of our people first. Oh, we've got to make sure that American citizens are taken care of. Bullshit. This president just took healthcare away from 17 million people. He's cutting food assistance to millions of people. And you expect me to believe he cares about your average American citizen? This trade deal that you guys are so hot on is going to jack up the prices on pharmaceuticals, on medicine for your average American people. So, you know, where is the care and concern for the American citizen here? It's all just about scapegoating an immigrant population and saying they're the reason. They're the reason for your pain and your problems, when in reality, it's the very oligarchic class that Trump himself represents and serves and protects with all of its actions, including the protection of the Epstein files, by the way.
Clay Travis tries to sell these harsh immigration tactics as strong leadership, but Krystal Ball doesn't let that slide. She calls it exactly what it is: cruelty built into the policy. And she's right. These aren't real solutions. They're performances meant to scare people and score political points. While immigrants are turned into scapegoats, the wealthy and powerful keep walking away with the real benefits. Krystal Ball cuts through the spin, and it shows how weak the arguments from Clay Travis and Piers Morgan really are once you strip away the talking points. That's why this moment matters. It's not just debate theater, it's exposing the intent behind the policy. What you think about that says a lot about how you see leadership. If you enjoyed the breakdown, don't forget to like the video, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.